Then next is the maternal and the fetal effects, means how the diabetes mellitus condition is affect the maternal and fetal condition. So in the maternal, during the pregnancy time, it will lead to the abortion condition, preterm labor, that is in 20% cases, and urinary tract infection, increased incidence of the preeclampsia in the 25% cases, polyhydramnios, maternal distress, diabetic retinopathy, microaneurysm, hemorrhage, and the proliferative retinopathies, then diabetic nephropathy and the ketoacidosis. So these all conditions occurs during the pregnancy time. The next is during the labor time, prolongation of the labor due to the big baby. So as I previously told you that in the diabetes mellitus condition, the size of the baby is increased or the macrosomic baby is born. So it will cause the prolongation of labor or the prolonged labor. Then again shoulder dystocia, perineal injuries, postpartum hemorrhages, and the operative interference, means there is need of doing LSCS in the women. So that all are the condition that happens during the labor time. Then puparium, during the puparium time, it will lead to the puparial sepsis or infection, then lactation failure. And in the fetal, it will cause the fetal macrosomia, that is present in 30 to 40% cases, and that is results from maternal hyperglycemia, means if the in the maternal the glucose level is increased in blood, that will cause the hypertrophy, means increase in size of the cell and increase in the number of the cell, that is the hyperplasia of the fetal isolates of the Langerhans, okay, from where the insulin and glucagon is secreted. So that will increase the secretion of the fetal insulin and stimulates the carbohydrate utilization and the accumulation of the fat. So just because of that, the baby's size is increased and lead to the fetal macrosomia. And another reason is the elevation of the maternal free fatty acids in diabetes leads to the increased transfer of the fetus and the acceleration of the triglyceride synthesis, and that will lead to the adiposity. Means in the maternal, what happened, maternal free fatty acids in the diabetes mellitus condition increases the transfer to the fetus, and it will lead to the acceleration of the triglyceride synthesis, and that causes the adiposity, that means the excessive accumulation of the adipose tissue or fatty tissue in the body, so that the baby's size will be increased. And next is the congenital malformation, like the that is present in 6 to 10% of cases due to the severity of the diabetes affecting the organogenesis, means it will affect the condition of the formation of the organs in the fetus. Then the major birth defect in infants of diabetes mellitus. So according to system wise, it is divided. First is central nervous system and the skeletal. It will cause the neural tube defects, anencephaly, macrocephaly, and the sacral agenesis. So in that sacral agenesis, that means the hypoplasia of the sacrum, and in the cardiac, that will lead to the ventricular septal defect or atrium septal defect, and coarctation of the aorta, transposition of great vessels, then cardiomegaly. The next is in the renal, it will lead to the renal agenesis, that means the absence of one or both kidneys, then hydronephrosis and urethral duplication. And in the gastrointestinal system, that will lead to the duodenal atresia or the anorectal atresia, and others like the single umbilical artery. So this kind of major birth defects present in infants because of the diabetes mellitus. Then other effects are the birth injuries like the brachial plexus and growth restriction, that is less common in the baby because in that condition the baby size is increased, and unexplained fetal death. Sometimes it will lead to the fetal death, and neonatal complications like the hypoglycemia, respiratory distress syndrome, hyperbilirubinemia, polycythemia, and the hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, and the cardiomyopathy, that all complications present in the neonates. And perinatal mortality increased 2 to 3 times due to the hypoglycemia and respiratory distress syndrome, polycythemia, and the jaundice. Because of that, the perinatal mortality rate is increased. The next we'll see the management of the diabetes mellitus during the pregnancy. So before managing the condition, we should have to advise the women to control their diet. Okay, so in that 30 kilocalorie per kg per day based on the pre-pregnant body weight for non-obese women. So we should have to advise the women to take the 30 kilocalorie per day kg per day based on the pre-pregnant body weight. If the woman is non-obese, means absence of obesity, and obese women with a body mass index that is more than 30 kg per meter square may benefits from a 30% calorie restriction. And weekly test for ketonuria, means the presence of ketone bodies in the urine, because the maternal ketonemia that means the presence of ketone bodies in the blood has been linked with impaired psychomotor development in the offspring. Means if the women having the ketonuria or the ketonemia, so that condition will lead to the psychomotor development or impaired psychomotor development in the fetus. So we should have to perform the weekly test for the ketonuria and the ketonemia. Then next is the calorie allotment. Calorie allotment is based on ideal body weight. Then recommendation are 30 kilocalorie per kg for women with a BMI or body mass index of 20 to 25, and 24 kilocalorie per kg for women with a body mass index of 26 to 29, and 12 to 15 kilocalorie per kg for women with a body mass index with the above 30. And the recommendation overall dietary ratio is 33% to 40%, that is complex carbohydrate, and 35 to 40% fat and 20% protein. During the pregnancy time, we should have to advise the women to take the carbohydrate 30 to 40%, fat that is 35 to 40%, and protein 20%. This calorie distribution will help 75% to 80% of gestational diabetes mellitus women become normoglycemic. Means if you will give the calorie according to that percentage, so that will help to reduce the diabetes condition or normalize the diabetes condition 75 to 80%. The next is the exercise. So after the maintaining the diet, we should have to advise the women to do some kind of exercise during the pregnancy time, like the antenatal exercise. The next is the glucose monitoring. So daily self blood glucose monitoring had fewer macrosomic infants and gained less weight after the diagnosis. So we can advise the women to check their blood glucose level daily. So she may had the fewer macrosomic infants and her weight will be less after the diagnosis of glucose condition. And then glycosylated hemoglobin should be determined at the end of first trimester and 3 months thereafter. So the glycosylated hemoglobin level of 5 to 6% is desirable. So glycosylated hemoglobin, that is the hemoglobin to which the glucose is bound, so that should be determined during the end of the first trimester and the 3 months thereafter. And if it is between the range of 5 to 6%, then it will be desirable. Then the insulin therapy after the diet, exercise and glucose monitoring. Then the insulin therapy we can give the women, that is recommended when standard dietary management does not consisting maintain the fasting plasma glucose at less than 95 mg per dl or the 2-hour postprandial plasma glucose. Postprandial, that means the after a meal plasma glucose level is less than 120 mg per dl. So if such kind of situation or condition is present, then we should have to start the insulin therapy. By the dietary management we can manage. And total dose of 20 to 30 units, that is oral dose before breakfast, is commonly used to initiate the therapy, which is divided into 2/3 intermediate acting insulin and 1/3 short acting insulin. And alternatively, weight based split dose insulin is administered twice daily. Means we can advise the insulin to the women in a alternative basis. And during the stabilization process of insulin dose, frequent blood sugar estimation, especially at night, may be necessary. Means when we are giving or providing the insulin therapy to the women, so it is very necessary to measure the blood sugar level at night. Okay, then next is the oral hypoglycemic agents that is avoided during the pregnancy. We should have to advise the women to not take any kind of oral hypoglycemic agents during the pregnancy time. The next is admission. In uncomplicated cases, the patient is admitted at 34 to 36 weeks, and early hospitalization facilities should be available, like establishment of diabetes if the woman is admitted in the ward, and minimizes the incidence of preeclampsia, polyhydramnios and the preterm labor, and to select out the appropriate time and the methods of delivery when the woman is admitted in the ward. We should have to properly select the appropriate time and the method of delivery. Then the termination of pregnancy should be done at 37 weeks, as majority of intrauterine death occurs in last 2 weeks of the pregnancy. So if the term is completed, that is 37 weeks, so we should have to conduct the termination of pregnancy or delivery of baby. Then early delivery may be considered when there is vascular complication, like if the women having the hypertension condition or the evidence of any kind of fetal compromise or on the antenatal monitoring. Then the induction of labor. The indication for the induction of labor is if the multipara with good obstetric history, then we can induce the labor, and young primigravida without any obstetrical complication, that is also positive sign, so we can conduct the induction of labor, and presence of congenital malformation of the fetus. So these all are the 3 indications for the induction of the labor. Then prior to the day of induction of labor, the visual bedtime dose of insulin is administered. Means when we are planning to do the induction of labor next morning, so before that at bedtime we should have to administer the insulin dose before the conduction of the induction of labor. Then no breakfast and no morning dose of insulin is given on the day of induction. Means on the day of induction of labor, we should not have to give any kind of insulin dose in the morning or before the breakfast time. And normal saline infusion is begun. Then induction is done by the low rupture of membrane, which is done with the help of the Kocher forceps, and simultaneously oxytocin drip is started if not contraindicated. Means when we are doing the induction of labor by the low rupture of membrane, so at the same time we should have to start the oxytocin drip if it is not contraindicated. Then and if not contracted, means if the uterine contraction is not present, an intravenous drip of 1 liter of 5% dextrose is set up with the 10 units of soluble insulin. So that all kinds of setup we should have to set during the time of induction of labor. Then an infusion rate of 100 to 125 ml per hour will be maintained. A good glucose control to approximately 100 ml per dl, and insulin may also be infused from the syringe pump. Means at the time of labor we can also provide the insulin by the help of syringe pump, and the blood glucose level are estimated hourly with a glucose meter, and the soluble insulin dose is adjusted accordingly. Okay, means in that condition hourly we should have to check the blood glucose level, and with the help of glucose meter or the soluble insulin dose is adjusted. According to that we should have to adjust the insulin dose. And epidural analgesia is ideal for the pain relief if the labor fails to start within the 6 to 8 hours, and or if the labor progresses unsatisfactorily, so the cesarean section should be performed in that condition. Then cesarean section. So indications for doing the cesarean sections are if the woman is early primigravida and the multigravida with the bad obstetric history, and the diabetes with the complications or any difficult sometimes it will difficult to control, and obstetric complications like the preeclampsia or polyhydramnios or the malpresentation is present. So in that condition we will perform the cesarean section. And the fetal macrosomia if the baby size is more than 4 kg. Then place of awaiting is spontaneous onset of labor at term. Means in which condition we can wait for the spontaneous delivery at term, means during the 37 week, that is young primigravida or multipara with the good obstetric history. So in that we can wait for the spontaneous delivery, and diabetes well controlled either by the diet or insulin and without any obstetric complications. So in that condition we can wait for the spontaneous delivery or the onset of labor. Then the fetal monitoring, constant watch to note the fetal condition is mandatory with the help of the electronic fetal monitoring. Then cardiotocography using a scalp electrode is maintained. Then fetal scalp pH sampling should be maintained or monitored. Then labor should not exceed more than 12 hours and should be augmented or induced by the low rupture of membrane and oxytocin or delivered by the cesarean section. Then examination of placenta and cord is also done. So placenta is large and cord is thick and there is increased incidence of a single umbilical artery. And features of placentosis is also present in the diabetes mellitus condition. Then during the puerperium time, antibiotics should be given prophylactically, means as advised by the physician. Then insulin requirement falls dramatically following the delivery, means after the delivery the insulin requirement is reduced dramatically or spontaneously. Then fresh blood glucose after 24 hours of delivery is administered. Then women who breastfeed should have additional 500 kilocalorie daily in the diet. And in the lactating women, insulin dose is lower and contraceptive devices should be used. Then the care of baby. So neonatologists should attend at the time of delivery in the labor OT. The next is baby should be kept in NICU and to remain vigilant, means proper vigilance or the monitor should be done for at least 48 hours. Then asphyxia is anticipated that can be treated effectively in the ward, and to look for any congenital malformation in the baby. And all the babies should have blood glucose checked within the 2 hours of birth, and all the babies should receive 1 mg vitamin K intramuscularly, that is given in normal delivery also and early breastfeeding, and to be repeated at 3 to 4 hour intervals. Then the nursing assessment. Determine the immediate and previous 8-week diabetic control, then evaluate the ongoing client and fetal well-being, and achieve and maintain the normoglycemia, means the normal condition of glucose in the blood, and provide the client or couple with appropriate information. So that all kind of nursing assessment we should have to done during the pregnancy time. Then which kind of nursing diagnosis we can make, like the risk for imbalanced nutrition related to inability to ingest the sufficiently quantity of nutrients, inability to utilize nutrients appropriately, and lack of information about the eating appropriately, and risk for fetal injury related to elevated maternal serum glucose levels, and risk for maternal injuries related to tissue hypoxia, increased maternal serum glucose level, and altered immune response. The next is the deficient knowledge regarding the diabetic condition, treatment, prognosis, and self-care related to lack of information and familiarity with the information resources. So that kind of nursing diagnosis you can make whenever we are planning the case presentation or the case study. So these all are about the gestational diabetes mellitus or the diabetes during the pregnancy. So thanks for watching. Thank you.